This is Parker Hesse. This is Sam Branks. You have the pleasure of listening to Hawkeyes and Tallboys. Cheers, motherfuckers.
Welcome to the Hawkeyes and Tallboys podcast, featuring your hosts, Bo Freeborn.
I think we play Penn State at home. I think we beat Penn State. We go to Wisconsin, we beat Wisconsin, not Wisconsin.
Dylan Pond.
I'm going to go ahead and predict that the Hawkeyes are going to be 12 and fucking 0, baby.
Oh!
And Rob Wall.
I mean, that would be shocking if he did that, but they can.
So crack a tall boy and go Hawks.
Okay, welcome in. This is our first episode of Hawkeyes and Tallboys in the year 2020. So we're happy to be back. Obviously, I'm joined by my pals Dylan Pond and Bo Freeborn, as you heard from our introduction. We're doing this for the first time on Zoom, which is exciting. So it's probably it's the new unofficial sponsor for the Hawkeyes and Tallboys. So we can go ahead and start off this episode just like we do with every episode, guys. So we got our tall boys here, and go Hawks! Cheers.
Ooh.
That's
Hey,
nice.
let's go Hawks. You hear us okay over there, Rob?
Yep, can hear you just fine. And you guys are looking great. And I noticed that we all decided to wear our Hawkeyes and Tallboys t-shirts.
You bet.
So I don't know if we're going to do that again this year. We actually are starting a little bit late this year. And this episode is the first episode of the season. So obviously we have a lot to get to today. So bear with us. We're going to do our best as we get through all the information to try to bring you up to speed before the 2020 Hawkeyes football season. So we have a little bit, obviously, like I just said, on the docket tonight. We want to get to what we did last year. Let's look at our season in review. We have some off-season issues that we're going to deal with, and there were many. And then we also want to preview this weekend's game against the Purdue Boilermakers, which we have here at home, I believe. Is that correct? Am I correct with that?
It's at Purdue, baby. Yep,
It's at Purdue.
We're going to West.
Because they were at home last year. Yeah, and it's a Big Ten only scheduled this year. There's no non-conference games. So it's starting on this weekend. So this is October 22nd, 2020. It's actually my birthday as well. I turned 33 today. And so we are, and I was going to do a podcast with you guys, so I couldn't be happier. But we have a lot. And we're also going to do the mailbag, of course. So, and we'll post it to all our platforms on Facebook, on YouTube, and we'll probably post a link to this or something on Instagram as well, on Twitter, so that way we can reach out. Everybody who's been supporting us, so thank you so much for all this, and obviously hope that everyone's well in 2020. So
For sure.
that's my PSA to begin. But I want to kick it off and toss it back to you guys. Let's start out with just getting back into, obviously, Dylan, you look a little different. You got a mullet.
Thank you. Thank you.
It looks epic. I love it.
It's not where it needs to be, Rob, but with patience, perseverance, and excellent hair care product, we're going to get where we need to go. So I appreciate the shout out.
Dude, could you imagine that thing in a Hawkeye helmet? Dude, Kirk Ferentz will put you out on the field in no time if you had
That's
some
right.
sort of eligibility left.
Perfect.
And I think I technically probably do.
And then obviously we got Bo with us too. And Bo, happy to be here and are with us online here. And so tell us about how things are going.
Dude, what a freaking year last year. I don't think any of us, we all thought 12-0 in our hearts. Okay, I think, Rob, you and I were, 9-win season, but we blew it out of the water with a 10-win season. Had a terrific ending with the Holiday Bowl. I mean, it was fun overall.
Yeah, that's, you heard all those media pundits, and I don't mean to, dwell on this win too much, but you hear all those media pundits. It's, Iowa doesn't have the speed. Iowa doesn't have the 4- and 5-star talent. Iowa doesn't have this. Iowa doesn't have that. And then on a national scale to come out and beat USC's ass. That's just a phenomenal way to end the season. Loved it.
And the best part about it too, yeah, we did lose two big names in Tristan Wirfs and AJ Epineza, but we had a ton of returning talent. But
Absolutely.
Even though we lost all those guys, what a way to go out of the bang. They end on a Holiday Bowl win. for Kirk Ferentz, a guy that all of us respect and love.
Absolutely. So, yeah.
The 2019 Hawkeyes finished 10-3, 6-3 in conference, 15th in the final AP poll. We finished with a bowl win against USC, like we mentioned. Third in the West behind Wisconsin and Minnesota, which is tough.
Still burns.
And it does, but, it's just fuel to the fire for the guys this year. So,
For sure.
Yep. And honestly, for the guys this year, they're probably just happy to be able to play. So between 2019 and 2020, if you've been living under a rock, there was a global pandemic, which has almost overshadowed the amount of off-season issues that the Hawkeyes have been dealing with. And so we don't want to dwell too much on it. But before we do that, let's look at some notable. So we lost Tristan Wirfs on the offensive line as a tackle. We lost AJ Epinesa, who's the all-star defensive end. We also lost Michael Ojemudia, Geno Stone, Nate Stanley, of course, senior quarterback, Christian Welch, linebacker, Nate Weeding, and Cedric Lattimore.
And a lot of those guys, honestly, are having some pretty good success in the NFL right now. Like Tristan Wirfs is probably one of the best, if not the best, offensive tackle in the NFL.
And protecting the blind side of the GOAT Tom Brady. That's
For sure.
Awesome.
For sure. AJ Epinesa just got his first NFL sack the other week for the Buffalo Bills, tearing it up. Michael Ojemudia has been targeted so many times already for the Broncos and is already playing some pretty good D. Geno Stone's on the practice squad. Nate Stanley got cut. I think he's on the practice squad with the Vikings still. Christian Welch with the Ravens. Waiting, I think, is with the Browns, right?
I believe.
Nate Waiting, I'm not sure.
I want to say they got a few guys hanging around the practice squads, and I think Ced Lattimore is in that.
Yeah, for sure.
In that field as well. But nonetheless, like you were saying, Rob, those are some pretty big blows to the defense, and Phil Parker's going to have his hands full this year. And I think, just looking into that, and we'll dive into it even more later, but you place a guy like AJ Epinesa, a generational talent that, if his old man hadn't have played at Iowa, who knows if he would have ever donned that Hawkeye uniform. So replacing him, it's one of those things, guys, I really don't think there's a way to do it. He puts up the production specifically like in the sack numbers of two people. So, Zach Van Valkenburg and Joe Evans and those guys have a tall task on their hands.
Yep. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think it's going to be interesting as fans, obviously, to watch, how the depth chart, shakes out this year. And we're definitely going to get to all that. But before we can look at, what they're going to look like on the field, we need to talk about what happened prior to them taking the field this year. So we're getting into the off-season issues. Then there were many, and honestly, there's probably a little bit too much. And I was almost disappointed. Actually, 100% was disappointed with the amount of press that things were getting and some of the traction, that was taking place with some of these stories that I just almost didn't want to believe that was going on. So, first off, we can start off with Chris Doyle, which is the longtime strength and conditioning coach, which we praised on our podcast last year and the year before, is no longer with the program, and neither is his son, Jack Doyle. And I don't know if those are related, but if you guys want to get into that.
Dylan Doyle. Jack Doyle's the tight end for the Colts.
Jack Doyle is the tight end for the Colts. Dylan Doyle.
I got you. Or he was. I don't know who with now.
Yeah, he's with Baylor. Oh, Dylan Doyle's at Baylor.
Yep, Dylan Doyle ended up at Baylor.
Yep.
But nonetheless, Rob, the firing of Chris Doyle, I'm sure there's a lot of people that have been waiting on my opinion of this for quite a while. And it's twofold. We live in a different generational time. I think if Bear Bryant was a coach today in, today's college football with social media and all of that being out there, who knows what would have been said about him. Now, by saying that, I'm not condoning the actions of Chris Doyle because specifically the racial accusations made to him are just frankly unacceptable. It's 2020. You can't be saying things like that. That's just all there is to it. Now, the kicker there is finding that fine line for the coaching staff now moving forward between being tough and hard and, wanting what is best for these kids, which is, in my heart, what I really hope Chris and the rest of that strength and conditioning staff were trying to do. But we weren't there. So, we get one side of the story essentially, and Chris Doyle doesn't get a chance to sell his side of the story, due to signing that deal and essentially saying, yeah, I'm not going to sue and I'm going to take my buyout and call it a day.
You know, on that note too, you talk about the strength conditioning staff, you know, everyone that we had heard from, and again, this is our opinion and what we've heard anyway, but heard nothing but great things about Coach Doyle and just his attitude. But I think the strength conditioning program is in pretty good hands with Raymond Braithwaite.
Yep.
Yeah, who's been there 16 years underneath Chris Doyle. So it sounds to me, from what we've heard from current players, that he's picking it up right where they left off. Sounds like the culture is a lot stronger, a lot better. Mm-hmm. And one thing that we could take away from this summer is that this team is closer than any team that Kirk Ferentz has coached, is what they're saying. So to me, that I think that we walked away with this with a better team aroma and higher hopes as fans.
Absolutely, like you said, Rob. Obviously disappointing, but you know, all we can do now, all the staff and the players can do is learn from it. You know, come together and move on. And I think they've done that.
They could, and this. So, if you know, for those of you who weren't aware, there was some racial remarks and things that former players came out and said that, you know, were happening and were taking place, and so and as a part of that, Chris Doyle decided to resign, and I think his son Dylan Doyle transferred. I think, did he follow him to the?
So Coach Doyle doesn't have a job yet. I think he has to wait a full year until he can get employed, I believe. But his son is at Baylor.
Baylor.
He's a starting linebacker at Baylor.
Of course, he would have been starting on the Hawkeyes too.
Yep.
Yep.
But that's all right.
That's a big blow.
So I think it's something that where, you know, the team can really use this as an opportunity to rally around, something that, you know, that they maybe, you know, don't want to define them, and that they want their play maybe to define them. That's what I would hope to see anytime you have a situation like this. So in addition to Chris Doyle leaving the program, we also had a couple other folks who entered the transfer portal and left. One being Oliver Martin, which we had talked a lot about, hashtag fans with sources.
I mean, yeah, that's how we got our saying right here, everyone. Fans with sources. You can see it with Rob's, because we're backwards over here, but you know, that's what we are. That's, you know, that started from the whole Oliver Martin saga of the summer of 2019, funny enough. But yeah, no, nonetheless, wish the best for him. I think he just got crowded behind a stacked wide receiver depth chart. And who would have thought that would happen? You know, I mean, obviously.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I mean, you got 5 main guys, you know, Tyrone Tracy, you got Amir Smith-Marset, Brandon Smith, Nico Reganey. And then now the emergence of Buffalo transfer Charlie Jones that we've been hearing a lot about in camp. So I think he just kind of saw the writing on the wall, has a couple of years of eligibility left, and found himself a home walking on it, Nebraska.
And that's crazy too, because, you know, if he's a senior now and has to walk on at Nebraska, I guess that kind of tells you how stacked that wide receiver room is at Iowa.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to say, it's weird to even say that there wasn't enough room for him in the wide receivers, in the Iowa wide receiver group. Like, normally we're a ground and pound and play defense type of team.
But you wonder what would have happened if he came to Iowa right out of high school, right? Because he went to Iowa City West. What would have happened if he came to Iowa? He could have been a 5 or 4 year starter for that matter.
Yeah, I think things would be a lot different if he would have made that choice. But
hindsight's 20/20.
Exactly, it is what it is.
True. And honestly, just shout out to all the Iowa City high school football players. If you're good, you just probably ought to just go to Iowa. Otherwise, you're going to end up walking on to Nebraska.
Exactly.
Nobody wants to do that. I'm just kidding. All the best to Oliver Martin. We also lost DJ Johnson, which was another notable loss.
Rob, I think he was your guy. I think last year you had 1 or 2 games that you thought he was a breakout star. Was going to have a breakout game too. So shout out you for really liking that guy. But he's going to be a familiar face this weekend because he got approved by the NCAA to play. So he's going to be lining up against the Hawks this week for Purdue.
Yep, he's ready to go. And I heard Tom Caker, shout out Rivals, does a little segment with them called Behind Enemy Lines. And I want to say it was Tom Beanhurt, who covers the Boilermakers, Purdue Boilermakers, and said that he's definitely going to be in the rotation as well. He may not necessarily start, but he's going to be in the rotation, which is pretty impressive for only being with the team for a summer. So,
well, we knew how impressive he was going to be in Iowa City too, and obviously he got some PT last year, so obviously a pretty good player.
Yep.
Great player. I liked him. I thought he was a dynamic athlete. So, I mean, just being able to watch him for the little bit that we did get with DJ Johnson. So you would imagine that training over the summer. He could be a force to be reckoned with. I also wondered this too, and they talked about this, some of the talking heads when it comes to pro football, but for instance, there's a guy, Le'Veon Bell, got signed by the Chiefs. Do they talk to the team, about plays and signs and, cadence and things like that? I wonder, because, DJ Johnson's been going against, the starters, I bet, all last year, so when it comes to like putting in different plays and things like that, I wonder if he just told the defense like, hey, watch out for this or that. That means like they're going to audible.
Yeah, that could be. Well, and one thing too, there's a lot of language and stuff on the defensive side of the ball too. So with him trying to understand coverages and stuff, does he even listen to the Iowa cadences and stuff like that? I mean, just to counteract that argument, but I'm sure you're probably right that he does know quite a bit about the Iowa offense.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, though, Iowa football, I mean, a good enough linebacker that watches his film can probably sit back there for the most part and guess what Iowa's going to do. What you need to do is be able to line up and stop it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. Yeah. And, defenses, statistically last year had a difficult time doing that, with the exception of running the ball, which I think is going to improve this year, but we'll get into that a little bit more.
Absolutely. And I'm excited to see that because we got to have something to go with our dynamic passing offense.
All right.
So speaking of guys, we lost some guys, but we also gained some players. So Bo, I don't know if you want to tell us about some of the incoming players that we have.
Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about Jack Heflin. He was, one of Pro Football Focus's top returning FCS D linemen. So he's on a lot of NFL draft radars and whatnot. And funny enough, he actually grew up dreaming of playing for the Iowa Hawkeyes and didn't get that offer. So decides to grad transfer and knew the entire time where he wanted to go. And we were lucky enough to get.
I may have accidentally muted you.
You did.
Sorry.
So I don't know where we got stopped, so no big deal. But grew up dreaming of being a Hawk. He's going to come to, for the most part, depleted, defensive line. So I definitely think you're going to see him playing on Saturday. And, with as long as everything goes right, we're going to see him playing on Sundays next year.
And Jack Heflin, so he's like an offensive lineman.
D-line.
Defensive lineman.
Yep. Gotcha. Okay.
And just note too, he had the most sacks in the MAC last year too. So I believe, don't quote me on this, he may have been the MAC defensive player of the year last year.
Wow, that's awesome.
Right. Yeah,
so he's a stud.
Yeah, so big steal, and then coming along with him as well was his buddy, fellow defensive lineman from Northern Illinois, Matt Lorbeck. So Lorbeck's situation was a little bit different, where he wanted to come to Iowa, essentially get a redshirt year under him. He was getting a redshirt right away, with next year being his senior year coming out full force. But as some of you may know, the NCAA officially passed that rule where essentially anybody that plays or does not play this year, it's free eligibility-wise. So Matt Lorbeck being a guy that wanted to redshirt this year and train, and get the Iowa defense down and everything, he's going to be able to get meaningful snaps this year as well and play next year in essentially his 6th year of eligibility. So couldn't have worked out any better for him and add some much needed depth to that defensive line position.
In the last of the incoming grad transfers, one of my favorite is Coy Cronk, the offensive tackle that transferred in from Indiana, who's an absolute stud. So we were talking a little earlier about Tristan Wirfs and who's going to fill his roles, because he's got a lot of big shoes to fill, right?
Right.
Coy Cronk comes in at 6'5", I think he's like 310, and he's a monster and has I think he started 40 games for Indiana or something like that.
Yep, 40 games.
He's an offensive tackle machine. He's going to be a perfect filler for Tristan Wirfs, and we could potentially see this guy on Sundays. I have a lot of high hopes for this guy, and it seems like he's going to fit the Iowa mold big time.
Yeah, same. And if those of you that don't recognize that name, so obviously comes out of IU. He's from West Lafayette, or he might be from Lafayette, but from Purdue area nonetheless. And so, gets to go home and playing his first game in an Iowa uniform. So you got to know he's fired up, especially after the way his season ended last year with that, a devastating ankle injury that knocked him out for the season.
Yeah, and you say that too. I think 247, it may even be Tom Kakert who wrote an article. Maybe it was anyway. He is from around the Purdue area.
Yep. And
when he knew he wanted to transfer from Indiana, he knew that he did not want to go to Purdue because he had too much respect for those guys. Didn't want to transfer within the state and said, hey, I don't want to disrespect my boys over at Indiana. And he knew how good of coaching Iowa had, especially with their track record of getting offensive linemen to the NFL. Hey, I'm going to go to Iowa, recover, learn their schemes, and potentially play on Sunday.
Yeah, and we all know how Kirk is with any incoming players, whether that be freshmen, transfers. You know, he doesn't want to put too much emphasis on them, any pressure, any unnecessary expectations, if you will. And so everything we've heard about him is they've just been raving about, you know, what an outstanding kid he is, you know, how quick he's picking up, you know, our zone blocking scheme, which is, you know, pretty atypical in the college football world. So nonetheless, very, very excited to see him. And he got that #1 spot on the depth chart. So
You bet.
he's ready to rock.
Perfect. We'll take that. We'll take offensive linemen if you got them. Like if you're looking to transfer, that's our bread and butter. So I'm excited for that too. And so obviously, you know, we have some players coming in, players leaving. We just recently had a news article that I wanted to talk about too, which was a group of former players were filing a lawsuit against the University of Iowa Hawkeyes, calling for, you know, head coach Kirk Ferentz's job, calling for $20 million in emotional distress and PTSD and
Asshats, Rob. That's what they are. There is absolutely so everything that James Daniels and guys like Carl Davis and them reached out and discussed, you know, for the betterment of the program, you know, essentially gets thrown out the window by these 8 jackasses that, you know, essentially for the most part, besides Akram Wadley and the other one, Cavante Martin Manley received very little playing time. But now these guys are sitting in their mother's basements, you know, wondering what could have been, you know, and they're pointing the finger, which is just so stupid to me. You know, it took DJK, Darrell Johnson-Koulianis, how many years to finally start taking some personal responsibility. And I think that's what these guys need to do at the end of the day. You know, you got one of the guys, Jonathan Parker, cited in his Robert T. Green article that Iowa made him eat steak medium rare. Like, boo freaking who? Are you serious? It's a free steak. You know, when I was in college, I would have killed for a free steak. I don't know about you guys, but my God, like what these guys are citing is so asinine. And then they have the nerve to ask for $20 million in damages and the firing of 3 coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Like that makes no sense to me, you know? And like I said, now the racial allegations that happened against the University of Iowa Hawkeyes, specifically the football program, there was a lot of merit there and a lot of positive changes came out of it. So I'm not dogging that whatsoever. What I'm dogging is these guys that are sitting at home, jobless, you know, looking for a free handout. That's bullshit.
So what, just for all the listeners out there too, the allegation or what they want is they want a $20 million settlement, $10 million to go to the 8 players and the other 10 to go to a foundation. And then the other side of it is to fire 3 coaches, 2 coaches, Brian and Kirk Ferentz, and then Gary Barta, the athletic director of Iowa.
Yep. And then they also called for some additional personnel moves for like a creation of like a board of advisors with former, you know, like African-American like players to be on.
Which the football program has done.
Yeah, I think they already did that.
And they want an African-American in a position of, you know, power within the Iowa football community. Well, that's what Broderick Vince, I couldn't tell you.
They already have.
Title now. Yeah, they promoted him to the director of diversity and inclusion within the athletic department or whatever. Like, so do your homework, find out what they have actually done. They've been sitting on their ass waiting for the chance to sue. And they happen to do it the week of the first game to try and start a big shitstorm. And frankly, it pisses me off because they have little to no merit. And,
yeah, no, I mean, I wonder about it. I wonder when it was like thought of.
He's got a little red there.
You know, it's all, we'll get redder as we go because we're only going to keep drinking and talking. So, but no, I mean, real talk. I wonder what, like, when the timeline was, or like when they decided to do this. You know, why it seems to be strategic that they wanted to drop it the week of the first game, and we didn't know that there was going to be a first game until pretty recently. You know what I mean? So, like, I don't know. I just wonder about that, and I wonder, like, if so a lot of these racial things that happened prior to the season were like earlier in like May and around that time. Am I right on the timeline? So all this, yeah, all this stuff happened. Coach Doyle left, everything like that. And then this rolls around on the other end, like right as we're seemingly over all of this stuff. So it caught me by surprise, and I don't quite fully understand now. Obviously, that being said, I don't think any of us are truly going to be able to understand because of the color of our skin, and then also because we're not players on the team, so all we can do is sort of commentate on what we think. But still, like, even that, as a fan of Hawkeye, no matter what your skin color is, as a fan of the Iowa Hawkeyes, it's got to kind of upset you a little bit, because this is a distraction that's taken away from the team. This is something that, like, even Kirk Ferentz mentioned, like, hey, here's what I'm concerned about: our players and our game coming up this Saturday. He just completely brushed it off, and obviously he is unable to comment on it, basically because it's in litigation right now.
Right.
And just for more information there, the University of Iowa respectfully mentioned they had a reply to the comments or whatever, the lawsuit, but they just said, we respectfully decline the monetary request and your personnel requests. What they said.
That was legal speak for telling these guys to F off.
Yeah.
Call it what it was. I mean,
So we're not going to do any of that. And, best of luck to you.
Right. Exactly. Pretty much.
So interesting stuff. Wanted to comment on that. We would be remiss to not mention it, just because it happened and seemed to blow up, over the past week or so. But we want to talk about, so looking forward to this game. So we want to preview what the Iowa Hawkeyes are going to look like this year, because obviously, like we said, we lost a lot of guys. We're going to have guys stepping into new roles. We're going to have a new quarterback, which I'm excited to look forward to see, what he can do on the field. But first off, let's start with the freshmen. So recruiting, and Dylan is our local recruiting expert. So I'd like to toss it over to Dylan and tell us a little bit about the incoming freshmen and who do you expect to contribute?
Okay. So the stars of this 2020 class that are officially Iowa Hawkeyes, the stars that everybody has heard of is quarterback Deuce Hogan, out of Grapevine, Texas, who had, a phenomenal career in the Texas football circuit, killing the game. There's a lot of excitement around him. I would just tell fans to, tamp down that excitement a little bit. You are going to see him this year because everyone can play. It's a free year of eligibility, but he's got a lot to learn. This isn't a system these guys learn overnight. So at the quarterback position, be looking for, primarily you're going to see a lot of Petrus and then a little bit of Alex Padilla as well, who is, a stud quarterback coming out of a spread system in Colorado. The other big name you heard in this was fellow 4-star Deontay Craig out of Culver, Indiana. Expect him in the defensive end position. Another guy, with a depleted defensive line, we're going to see him a little bit this year. So I wouldn't say anything big right away. I think they're going to bring him along slowly, but you are going to see him play this year. And for the record, too, I just want to point this out. If anybody ever questions my recruiting knowledge or my predictions, remember everything I said about Tyler Goodson last year. In our first episode, everybody's like, oh, it's a true freshman. He's going to play running back. We already got 3 good ones, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no, look at me. I'm right.
I love that. Just straight to the haters.
Exactly, straight to the haters. And then, so another guy to be on the lookout for is Isaiah Bruce, coming out of Lena, Illinois, a 3-star guy. Gavin Williams, running back out of West Des Moines, played most of his high school ball at Southeast Polk before transferring to Dowling his last year. Logan Jones, stud out of Lewis Central, and
we'll see him a lot at the DN.
Yeah,
I think he's the second stringer.
Yep. And so he's a 3-star on Rivals, but I think 247's got him as a 4-star as well. So he's one of those borderline high 3-star guys to, be excited about. We got Ethan Herkett, linebacker, coming out of Cedar Rapids. Josh Volk, both of those guys coming out of Xavier. Josh Volk is going to play on the offensive line. Special friend to Hawkeyes and Tallboys, we got Mr. Tyler Ellsbury, the best looking of all the Ellsbury brothers from what I hear. So, be looking for him. And a little inside tidbit that Bo got is he made the travel squad this year. So
he did.
We were lucky enough to get an interview with him after he committed last year, and a lot of big things. Very excited for that young man. Mason Richmond, another guy, committed as a defensive end. There's talks about him possibly switching to tackle as well. So you're going to see him on either the offense or the defensive line. So another guy to be excited about. Yaya Black out of Marshall, Minnesota, a little small town where, they had to take a gravel road to get there. They got a lot of cool recruiting stories that I highly recommend you look into.
Fun fact. So it looks like his name is Yaya. They pronounce it Waya. It looks like Yaya, but he's actually Waya.
And I'm sure you guys can tell I'm trying to get through all these commits, but yeah, appreciate that though, Bo. Nonetheless, that's awesome. Then keeping that Florida pipeline strong. We got a wide receiver, Quavon Matthews, coming out of Largo. Excited for him. AJ Lawson, defensive back out of Decatur. Jay Higgins. If you are Twitterers, I highly recommend following his father. His father is incredible on Twitter. He's hilarious. Everything he says, his name's Roy Higgins, I believe.
Yep.
Roy, and everything's Higginized.
Higginized, baby.
He works some sort of construction. He's been doing work at Purdue all week, wearing his Iowa hard hat. So, and look for his boy too, actually. We'll get into this a little bit later, but with Jack Campbell being out Saturday, his boy's going to possibly get some minutes at that linebacker position
He's
as well.
a stud too.
Yeah,
he deserves minutes.
He's a stud.
Higginized, baby.
That's right. Lucas Van Ness coming out of Barrington, another guy on that defensive line to be looking out to get some minutes this year. He's the one, if you guys remember, we shared he played hockey in high school. So we shared a video of him, essentially decleating somebody. It was an awesome hit. He had to go to the penalty box for it, but and that was his caption, what happens when you put a D end in skates. So, pretty pumped for him. We got Reggie Bracey, defensive back coming out of Mobile, Alabama. Luke Lachey. Did I skip somebody? Luke Lachey. Let's see here.
Deontay Vines.
Yeah, so I did skip a couple of big studs as well. Deontay Vines coming out of Watertown, Connecticut. Wide receiver. Look for him to not get a lot of time right away, but him and guys like Quavon Matthews to develop, and those guys have a lot of high upside. Michael Lois technically is considered a commit. If most of he had a spinal cord injury diving into a pool, so he's more than likely going to end up on the team just as a football assistant kind of thing. But they're honoring his scholarship. Kind of shows you the man Kirk Ferentz and the Iowa staff is. Then Brendan Dees Fernandez, two-star defensive back out of Belleville, Michigan, that Phil Parker offered late. Now, tell me if you've heard that story before, but kid's got Desmond King written all over him. Love it. Undersized guy, under-recruited. And then the boys went down under
my favorite
on a recruiting trip. We got, he's 23 years old, freshman at the University of Iowa, Torrey Taylor. Yep, and so he's an Aussie, mate.
What position?
He's a punter.
Yes, I knew it.
Following the legend last year.
Yep, following the legend and Michael Sleep Dalton. And I believe he's number 1 on the depth chart right now, too.
Sure
so
is.
He's going to be punting right off the bat for the Hawkeyes. So.
Sounds like he has a leg. He's got a boomer.
Right. And guys, I got so excited. I skipped a couple of people. I feel horrible. Highly sought after tight end Elijah Yelverton out of Cedar Hill, Texas. Another one. He's expected to contribute early. Just one of those guys that has a Big Ten body in high school. Just tore it up. Very, very excited for him. And then running back LaShawn Williams. Great recruiting class. I think overall, according to Rivals, I want to say they ranked in the 30s. 35 here it says. So those 22 commits ranked 35. And if you followed Iowa recruiting over the past several years, you'll notice there was a trend there for a long time where they were having success, with recruiting classes ranked in the 50s. And so just in these past few years, they've really upticked that. And, they've gotten into the 40s a little bit. And I think this is their first class that has dipped into the 30s. So, and especially with this class for 2021 coming up, the talent is coming to Iowa City, boys. And, they see what we're building, Kirk 5.0, whatever the hell you want to call him. So fired up.
Dude, shout out Tyler Barnes for that recruiting effort too, and all the coaches, man. They're really getting these Hawks to believe. And honestly, this 2021 class is looking fucking good too.
Right. And I mean, we can even hit that quick just with the guys that are already committed. So, before the June stuff happened, before COVID and COVID halted visits and whatnot, the class they were stacking up was looking pretty good as well. So I'll just get into that a little bit. You got 4-star offensive lineman Connor Colby already committed. Having a heck of a senior year for Cedar Rapids Kennedy. Justice Sullivan, another 4-star linebacker out of Eden Prairie, Minnesota, another stud. David Koff, who turned down some really big offers to come play offensive line at the University of Iowa. So,
4-star offensive tackle from
Yep.
Chicagoland area.
Yep. And then we got Jennings Dunker, another offensive lineman from Lena, Illinois. Jaden Harrell and Griffin Little, or I guess I was thinking they went to the same high school, but Jaden Harrell's a linebacker out of Urbandale. I'll be looking for them here in the high school playoffs right now, and they're kind of tearing it up. Griffin Little's a defensive tackle at Bettendorf. Zach Tweed out of Story City. He's the guy that Iowa flipped late from Iowa State. Jeff Bowie from West Branch. Cooper DeJean from Ida Grove, Iowa.
Stud.
Yep. Max Llewellyn, teammates with Jaden Harrell at Urbandale, so they're killing it. Bo Springs, another guy, Blue Springs, Missouri.
Stevens.
And then, Bo Stevens. What did I say? Bo Springs?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, from Blue Springs, Missouri. Sorry about that. And then some really, really good wide receiver prospects right here. We got Arlen Bruce, nephew of Isaiah Bruce, who many of you will remember played for the St. Louis Rams for a long time. So he's got the bloodlines. We'll see if it pans out.
Isaac Bruce?
Say that.
Isaac?
Isaac Bruce.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Hall of Fame or Isaac Bruce?
Yeah.
Yes,
Hall of
sir.
Famer Isaac Bruce. Yep. So that's his
Perfect.
uncle.
We'll take it.
Yeah. And then we got Brody Brecht, who committed to play football and baseball at the University of Iowa. So not only is he a stud wide receiver, but he's also got, a high 90s mile per hour fastball to go with him. So
And a little Connor McCaffrey action there.
Yep, stud there. And then Keegan Johnson, whose old man actually played for Nebraska, won a national championship with Nebraska, slided them and chose the Hawkeyes as well. So
And honestly, he's probably having the best season out of all the recruits from what
he's
we've seen. He's
killing it.
absolutely killing it.
Yep.
He's got a ton of receiving touchdowns and a ton of rushing yards right now. So
Yep. They're talking about him getting that bump to a 4-star rank as well.
For sure.
And then got, a defensive end in there, Jeremiah Pittman. And then we got our quarterback for our class, Joey Labus. And if you ever see pictures of him, he's got some wild hair. He's kind of like your boy here.
super tall. He was a committed to Ball State and then decommitted last minute when Iowa came in. And Dill, I don't know about you, Rob. I know you for sure. Probably thirsty after talking about all these recruits. I'm getting freaking wound up, boys. I think that deserves a quick crack and new drink. How about that?
Sure.
There we go.
Hell yeah.
Perfect.
Thanks, Dill. Thanks for the recruiting breakdown.
Excellent recruiting breakdown as always, Dill.
Absolutely.
On top of it, where nobody else is. You only hear about those recruits from us, so thank you so much.
And I got to give a special shout out in case they end up listening and think I'm stealing all their info. It's, my boys, Blair Sanderson and Tom Kakert. I've never met them, but I call them my boys because I see them every day online killing it for Rivals, specifically the Hawkeye Report, and love them guys. And got to give a special shout out to David Eicholt as well. We've had a few interactions on Twitter, and he's a hell of a guy with 247, makes me want to spend some money with them as well. So
Eicholt's the man, dude. He's
Dude,
got
he is. He's
such
great.
good shit. Listeners
great.
out there, he's got some really good shit. If you should give him a follow on Twitter for sure.
absolutely, at the
For sure.
very least. So
So we've been pounding the pavement. We've been getting after it, pulling these guys in. So now let's kind of get to our depth chart, because that kind of leads us into what these 2021 Iowa Hawkeye football team is going to look like. And so we can start out with on offense, because I know we have some returning this heralded wide receiver core.
yeah, dude, it's insane. And Bo, I know you probably want to talk. I'm pumped. I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Go for it.
But we got the entire wide receiver core coming back. You got Brandon Smith, you got Amir Smith-Marset, you got Tyrone Trace, you got Nico Reganey. Oh, incredible. And that's not even to say, running backs. We got Tyler Goodson coming back, Mekhi Sargent coming back. And then a lot of people forget about Ivory Kelly Martin coming back as well.
He's still in the mix, because we first said his name and he was a sophomore.
Right.
Now,
And he unselfishly redshirted last year because he knew how strong Tyler Goodson was going to come in, knew he'd be a role player this year. And it sounds like Kirk loves his leadership, and he's definitely going to see some PT this year.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's not like he's a bad player. He's stuck behind, so he's technically 2B along with Mekhi Sargent behind Tyler Goodson, who's going to be the number one guy coming in this year. And then not to even mention, he didn't necessarily play the whole season, but really came on at the end. Sam Laporta at that tight end position.
yeah,
Between him and Sean Byer, I think Sean Byer kind of developed himself into that role of more of that inline blocking tight end and has done a pretty damn good job. Well, then we look at, Sam Laporta as more of that receiving threat that you traditionally have found with Iowa Hawkeye players like TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fan as of late. So Yeah, there is a lot of firepower coming back on this offense.
There is. And, there was a stat out there. I want to shout out my boy, David Eichel. He said Iowa sophomore running back Tyler Goodson has rushed for a touchdown in 4 straight games dating back to 2019. Last Hawkeye to rush for a touchdown in 5 straight games with Mark Weissman, who went 7 straight games with a rushing touchdown in 2014. So
Heisman for Heisman.
That tells you how good Tyler Goodson is. And Dylan, you forgot to even mention your boy Charlie Jones in the wide receiver depth.
Well, because he's technically not a returner, so that's what I was raving about our returners. But no, and then you get this no-name guy out of Buffalo, and a lot of you people probably don't even recognize him unless you've been following. But everybody, players included, have been just raving about this kid. He comes out of Buffalo. He's still a younger guy. I want to say he's only got a year or 2 in with the Buffalo program, so he's got multiple years with the Hawks here coming up. But he was the one that they found that caught that little floater that Petrus threw in practice the other day. And the kid's just a stud. They're all saying that he's earned his stripes, and you're definitely going to be seeing him on the field this year. But he's got 4 guys ahead of him that are just absolute studs too. I mean, you can't play them all.
Yeah, you can't play them all, and that's the thing, and it's a good problem to have. But I mean, if you look at guys like who came in and got a little playing time, and look what they did with it, Tyrone Tracy Jr., who was just making plays. Like, he's hard to tackle. I remember he would catch like a slant and just, similar to Amir Smith-Marset, be able to make a move and get an extended 4 or 5 yards before he was tackled. And that's what you look for. Charlie Jones, I kind of want to look up his stats. Looks like he's a 6 foot, 180-pound wide receiver, originally from Deerfield, Illinois.
Yep.
So he, I guess would look like more of a slot receiver rather than like a Brandon Smith, who's more of like an outside split end.
Yep. Him and Nico Regani are very similar.
Yep. So him and Nico are going to be the 1-2s that, what do they call that? Is that the Y?
Yeah.
And no, they have the X, Y, and Z. I forget which one it is, but nonetheless, you're going to be seeing him line up at the slot position, behind Nico Regani this year.
So we've been talking a lot about these receivers and running backs and tight ends, but how do we forget about our brand new quarterback, the GOAT, soon to be GOAT, Spencer Petras?
Dude, he's awesome.
So I'm so excited.
He loves Childers. If you guys have never listened to Tyler Childers, I highly recommend him. The dude just shreds. He kicks ass. He's also a Deadhead. I'm not a huge Grateful Dead fan, but shit, they've been around over 100 years. That's pretty cool.
He's from their area, right?
Yep.
Rob, what do you think about this guy?
So Spencer Petras, and this is the stat that everybody throws out there. So if you've heard this before, forgive me. But he went to the same high school as Jared Goff. And Jared Goff, obviously, in California, set all the records for his high school passing.
Statewide.
Spencer Petras came in the same high school as Jared Goff and broke all of his records. So obviously we're looking at probably a situation where it was a great system, but still you got to be a good quarterback to throw it that many times, to get that many touchdowns, to get that many completions.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And the kid's a stud. He's proven. I was a little worried about it coming in this year after having 3-year starter Nate Stanley essentially leave the helm. And don't get me wrong, I still have my reservations, but the first thing you hear this kid do is get a group of guys together to go to a concert in Nashville, pre-COVID. And it's that is so cool. That is what a leader does. I always hear this funny story, and I won't name drop anybody but one person, but you heard in the 2002, which was, kind of a dreadful season for us, but James Ferentz, when they were in camp, they weren't allowed to, go out on the town and do anything to get themselves in trouble, all that. So James Ferentz comes in to the hotel with, a couple cases of Busch Light and says, "All right, boys, we're going to have some fun tonight." It's that is pretty cool. That is senior leadership. These kids are young. They're kids. I mean, we all remember our college days for the most part. The weekends are a little fuzzy. God, that's just so cool to me, because they're there for number one. They're playing the game they love. They're having fun. And it's not that we haven't seen that before, but Nate Stanley was more of that quiet leader. So, it feels like, and again, I'm not trying to put any unwanted expectations here on Spencer, but he's got a little CJ Beathard to him. And maybe it's just because he's got the red beard and kind of looks like him. I don't know, but
Dude, so on that note, I read an article today, and I can't tell you. I'm just gonna shout out David Eichel because I love the guy. But they said that over the summer, with COVID, obviously you can't have coaches around, can't practice. He said that he called every single one of his receivers, and they went to high school football fields around Iowa City, and they were running routes, throwing balls all day long, and so the chemistry is completely there. And then he even had, I believe it's going to be called the Heartland. It's going to be coming out, I believe, tonight, tomorrow at noon on YouTube. He has a story on there about, oh shit, I just fucking lost it. Anyway, long story short, like Dylan said, he's not a silent leader. He's going to be more vocal. It sounds like a bunch of the dudes respect him. He lives with Tyler Linderbaum, this center, so they're obviously good friends. They have a good connection.
Mhm.
And it sounds to me, just like from every video we've seen, this is gonna be fun.
well, and that's the thing. If you're one of those star receivers coming back after your quarterback for the past 3 years is leaving, there might be some reservations there, but you hear Amir talk about it. You hear Brandon Smith talk about it. You've heard Tyrone Tracy talk about it. They're like, oh yeah, Spence got us. Spence is with us. Like there's literally nothing. And one of the things you heard, I can't remember which one it was either Brandon Smith or Amir Smith-Marset, but they talked about, him and Spencer and Nate having a similar, not arm speed, but
Strength.
Yeah, arm strength. Thank you. Similar arm strength. But the thing that Spencer has that is not necessarily better, but he's got the touch on the ball. And those of you that follow me on Twitter, you might have saw that we posted that as well. It's just I reposted a retweet from like a couple of days ago because I watched it again, and you just look at the touch that Petras has, and it's just incredible. Like you can tell he can throw the ball a quarter mile, but in this situation, he only had to throw about 45, 50 yards and just falls right into, a little 1 foot gap where, that defender can't get to it. And that is a weapon you need to have in the Big Ten. Those throws that you got to make that I don't want to say Nate Stanley didn't make, but there was times he left you with your head scratching where it's like,
Yeah.
That was 15 yards downfield.
Yep.
There was that. And speaking of similarities, so we would always compare Nate Stanley, and I don't know if it's just the black and yellow, but we'd always compare him to Big Ben in the pocket because he was a bigger guy. He seemed to be able to hold his own, hard to bring down. He could throw the ball. He seemed to be able to extend plays a little bit. But yeah, he also, also left your head scratching, for lack of a better term. There's one specific play that is etched in my mind where it must have been a play fake, and Hawkinson was on the line and came off on the tight end seam, wide open down the middle of the field, and he overthrew him by like 5 yards, and it was a touchdown. And it was a pivotal game, and that's something that like I think about when I think about that. But speaking of, let me share this real quick. Spencer Petras, 6'5", 231, according to ESPN. And look at that smile, guys. He does. He looks like a leader. He's got the red hair. He looks like he's happy to be here. And he, like Nate Stanley, is coming in as a sophomore.
Yep. And that's safe to say he's breaking hearts left and right in Iowa City.
Oh,
Of course, he is staying in his room with his mask on, playing video games like he should be doing his homework.
Honestly, though, he probably is because he's that kind of person. He's probably sitting there listening to Childers,
Right?
Yeah, but no,
Childers, good stuff.
Think about this, guys. Like the last 5 quarterbacks dating back to Ricky Stanzi, even just look at Nate Stanley's first year as a starter and how good and how, hey, fuck it, we're going to let loose. We're going to throw the ball around. Mm-hmm. I don't even care if I throw picks. Let's just see what happens and how much success they had, how fun those seasons were. It was almost like expectations were out the door. Yes, there are a lot of high expectations this year, but to me, that has success written all over it.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. So I am absolutely pumped.
Now, would you guys say, and from your own perspective, do you think that Spencer is going to be more of like a pocket passer type player, or is he more of like a dual threat?
So officially, like recruiting wise, they would list him as a pocket passer. However, he's got that ability, at least from his high school film, that he's shown to escape the pocket and make throws as necessary. So is he going to be a full blown Drew Tate? Absolutely not. I wouldn't call him that true dual threat. But, again, I know it's putting really high expectations on this kid, and I don't mean to do that. But he's more of that CJ Beathard, where it's not necessarily a true dual threat, but he can get out, he can make plays with his legs. Not whereas, Nate Stanley was sometimes kind of a statue back there with, just limited by his size, more or less. And so he definitely brings that different element to the game.
That's kind of what I wanted to bring up, just because there are times that I could remember last year where I just wonder, and, when you're in the moment and you're playing quarterback for the Iowa Hawkeyes, it's got to be tough, but like when there's a broken play, and he doesn't throw it out of bounds, or where he could run and get a few yards, like, how you see like the pros do all the time, or like he'll take a sack and it's like, just get out of throw the ball, like do so, like, you know what I mean? And so I'm just wondering, like, obviously these kids are young, this is their time to kind of prove themselves a little bit. And obviously that decision-making ability comes just from being able to play the game. So, as a sophomore, am I expecting to do that? No, but I have high hopes.
Well, and I think you're right, Rob. I think he's going to try and escape the pocket a little bit, and I bet he will start to run. The one thing I do wonder about is that Nick Stanley was very good at was the quarterback sneak. With him being 231 pounds, I have good feelings that he's going to be able to, do a quick little sneak action on 4th and 1. But will he be as effective as Nate Stanley getting average damn near 5 yards a carry? Had to, right? At least last year anyway.
We won't put any expectations on him like that necessarily, but just get that yard. And I'm okay with it as long as you're slinging the rock around.
Perfect. So that kind of brings us to the defensive side of the ball, guys. We got some new faces on defense. Our defense is always kind of what we, hang our hat on. As Dylan likes to say, we really rely on our defense a lot. And so I guess I want to
don't break, baby.
That's what I was waiting for. Right. That bend but don't break defense. Right. So who do we got on the defensive side of the ball?
So your roster this year for the six seconds of hell, Norm/Phil Parker defense for the Iowa Hawkeyes. You're looking at returners. We got Chauncey Golston. You got Davion Nixon, who was not necessarily a starter on the defensive line, but got a lot of snaps last year. Dane Belton coming in, started as a true freshman last year, playing that cash a little bit in that safety role as well. You're going to see him play a little bit of both this year, depending on situations. Nick Neiman, brother of Super Bowl champion Ben Neiman as well. Matt Hankins, another guy coming in his senior year, has played quite a bit. I'd look at him to be your typical defensive back, Phil Parker defensive back that seems to break out and have a hell of a senior year and get himself in the NFL. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on. We got Jack Corner, coming off of, I wouldn't even call it an injury. He had a jet ski accident over the summer in the Lake of the Ozarks, and supposedly he's 100% ready to go. So pump for him. And then Riley Moss as well at the cornerback position, who received quite a bit of time, has a few starts under his belt.
I'm pretty sure he has 3 or 4 picks against Minnesota alone over the last 2 years too.
Yep. So he's a Minnesota killer. So love it. But again, like we touched on earlier, we got some really key departures coming out of there. You had senior linebacker Christian Welch, who, if you guys remember in that Wisconsin game last year, missing him for a few games, that really hurt the team, in the few losses that they did have. So, those are big shoes to fill there. You got safety Geno Stone, obviously, to the NFL. Jaimin Colbert this year is going to be gone, another linebacker, just due to COVID.
Digimon.
So he'll be back next year. Yeah, Digimon. And then, obviously OJ Medea, AJ Epinesa, Cedric Lattimore, Brady Reef, and then Dylan Doyle, some really, really big names to fill on that defensive side of the ball. So that's kind of my question mark this year, is that defensive side, I guess. What do you think, Bill?
Well, I agree completely. And I actually want to go back to you on this one too, because I'm actually really excited about all phases of the defense, because we have depth at corner and safety, right? Our secondary, it seems like we have a bunch of depth. Our weakness may be our linebackers, but I still feel like we have some pretty good depth at linebacker, personally.
And it's so funny you say that, because you listen to Phil Parker, in the preseason press conferences and whatnot, and he said he thought that was the strength of their team.
Right.
And Seth Wallace, who's the coach of the linebackers, didn't necessarily agree with that, but how positional coaches are. It's always, we can do better kind of thing. So I got that, but that was just so interesting to me to hear, and especially with how hard of a coach that Phil Parker is.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of high expectations for these guys and think they can deliver.
So on that, I mean, we obviously know that we have a ton of returners some returners on the D line, obviously some big shoes to fill. What do you think is going to be the biggest key part, or who do you think is going to be the strong focal point of our defense this year?
Oh, this year. I mean, typically you look at any Iowa team and it's going to be, in that defensive back, linebacker, hybrid range. So, focal points of the defense this year, I'd say, especially game one, Dane Belton having a year of experience under his belt, look to him to be making a ton of calls and playing a team like Purdue that's heavy on the offensive side of the ball. Look for the Hawks to be in a lot of situations where that cash position is going to be utilized, possibly even a little bit of dime packages as well. So for those of you that don't know, essentially you're just bringing in an extra defensive back rather than a linebacker there. So, so I'd say there, as far as game one, we're looking at Dane Belton probably being that focal point. As far as, the rest of the season and beyond, I'm really looking at that linebacker position. I think somebody steps up. I think somebody has a James Morris type of impact where they can come in and make, they're going to have their mistakes. We just have to accept that. They're young guys at that linebacker position. But I'm looking at guys like Justin Jacobs, a 4-star linebacker out of Ohio. I'm looking at guys like Jack Campbell, when he recovers from mono. Oops, did we just drop that? Fans with sources, let's go. So Jack Campbell, recovering from mono, I'm looking at him, hopefully back quick and is able to contribute this year. I'm looking at guys like Jay Higgins, like these young guys that can come in. Seth Benson is another one. Not an incoming freshman, but another guy that can step up and contribute. Looking at Nick Neiman. So these linebackers have to be the focal point of the offense. As I always say, if your leading tackler is your safety, there's an issue.
Yeah, right. Well, that means that the other team's making a lot of plays down the field where you're, exactly. Well, and I agree with you to a point, but I definitely think that our D line is going to be the big point of the year. Stopping the ball at the line of scrimmage and creating that pressure and being able to stop the run, especially, but at least getting pressure on the quarterback.
Do you think they're up to the task? And if so, why?
Dude, I absolutely think so. And I said this at the end of the year last year, I think on our recap show, but Chauncey Golson is going to be the guy. He's going to be AJ Epineza 2.0. Yes. I think that he was undershadowed last year because of AJ. Obviously, AJ is a terrific player. But Rob, I think you really like Chauncey too. But I think he's going to be a freaking stud.
I love Chauncey Golson. He's just a beast. He's really big. He's been playing a lot, even when he was young. So now it's his time to kind of shine. This is going to be his year. He's a redshirt senior, I believe, this year. So this is his time to prove it and to show us why he's NFL caliber. You know what I mean?
And you know what? And it's crazy too, because usually Iowa has a pretty damn good D line. So there's going to be that one person who shines every year. And again, I think it's going to be Chauncey Golson.
And and I think that's fair to say. You look at the last couple of years. Started all 13 games for the Hawkeyes. And specifically last year himself having 26 solo tackles. 47 total tackles. 26 of those being solo, 21 with assists. And then 9.5 of those being for loss and 3 sacks. Obviously overshadowed by AJ Epinesa there, but he's going to be the guy. And, let's say he does more of like that game manager type of role. You got guys inside Davion Nixon who can show that he can pressure the ball. You got Van Valkenburg on the other side of the ball as well. So there's a lot to be excited for on that defensive line. But I think it's fair to also say it's unproven talent. There's talent there, but it's not necessarily full-blown proven. So, and
I think you could say that about the whole defense too.
Absolutely.
I think there's a ton of safeties and corners that obviously have playing experience, but this is going to be their year to show up and come to the test.
Absolutely.
I think from their perspective too, playing and seeing the guys in front of them have so much success, like AJ Epinesa. And the things that he was able to do, what he did his senior year and the year before, actually his breakout season, his junior year, and how that propelled his stock, so quickly to be, in the position and playing for the Buffalo Bills like he does now. I mean, now it's just now he's gone. So it's so easy to see how somebody could say, okay, well, he did that. I'm going to do it now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's what I'm looking forward to. I will tell you though, too, and listeners at home, Dylan actually showed me Justin Jacobs when he committed last year or more than a year ago. Yep. And I watched his little Rivals highlight tape.
Oh yeah.
And he can hit.
He's a hitter. he's a hitter. He's one that, Phil Parker and Seth Wallace both have just loved the progress he has made. He's one that enrolled early. So, expect for him, especially this weekend, I think with Jack Campbell being out, you're going to see him on the field a lot. And he's just a downhill runner and he's a hitter. So love to see it.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys where he just stands out on a tape, like especially when you're watching like high school, like action in the backfield and stuff like that. Like he's got a nose to the ball. He was able to just come around the corner and just nail people and get off blocks and pan, it was just very impressive. And I was like, man, like he's going to be a Hawkeye. That's awesome. So yeah, super excited for him. He's a 4-star linebacker. So I'm excited for him. But yeah, I mean, like we're going against Purdue this weekend. The Purdue Boilermakers finished last year, 2019, 4-8, not very impressive. But if you remember from last year when we played them at home, I actually went to that game, and it was not necessarily an easy win for us. And in fact, their freshman receiving core was super impressive. And actually one of those guys almost went to Iowa. Am I correct?
David Bell. Yeah, Semi almost went to Iowa. That's what he was like the number one target that the Hawkeyes were after that year. And, they made him number one priority. I want to say we ended up in the top 3, but nonetheless chose the home state school, and which sucks for him, but what are you going to do?
So these Purdue Boilermakers last year, just to give you a rundown of what we're looking at, guys, they beat Vanderbilt, Maryland, Nebraska, and Northwestern, most notably being probably the latter two, Nebraska and Northwestern.
Right.
They lost to us, Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana. They lost to Penn State. They lost to Minnesota, TCU, and also Nevada.
And Rob, why they were so bad? It's because their defense was atrocious. Last year they were 12th, and even just the Big Ten, they were 12th in the Big Ten in rushing defense and 13th in passing defense. So they let, especially the Big Ten teams, run and throw all over them. So they were getting their asses kicked, and then they had a ton of injuries too last year that really hurt them.
I was going to say Rondale Moore was out for the whole season or big portion of the season. So that's a huge blow to them, but. Yeah, they're not a team to be taken lightly, especially with that receiving core. They got David Bell, one of the up-and-coming receivers in the Big Ten, if not one of the best receivers in the Big Ten, as well as Rondale Moore, who is arguably the best receiver in the Big Ten. And he was one. He actually opted out for the NFL draft when he heard, that COVID was canceling the Big Ten season, opted back in once he heard the Big Ten season was a go. So, it's safe to say he's going to be a thorn in our side, between him and David Bell both. So, sure. I think our defense is going to have to step up, and communication is going to be key. And, Jack Horner and Dane Belton are going to have a hell of a time on their hands along with our cornerbacks.
What's really good about this too, and I hate to praise that players are out, but they just came out today and said that there's either going to be 5 or 6 players who aren't going to be playing this week. They didn't disclose which of those players is going to be, but there's going to be 4 to 5 coaches and 5 to 6 players who are not going to be there playing on
due to COVID concerns. And that's a big note too, is Jeff Brown, their head coach, is going to be out of the game because he tested positive for COVID. So they're trying to do a few things to get him to be able to coach remotely. I don't even know how that works. I mean, are you watching ESPN, listening to commentators like?
Yeah, so they, exactly. So they petitioned the NCAA, and I as of the last time that I looked, there was not an answer on whether they'd be able to do
it. Sounds like tomorrow they're going to get an answer.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I think that brings us into a pretty cool, little thought process. I know we were talking about a little bit breakout players. I guess, Bo, who do you see as a breakout player for this game?
I guess
let's go on the defensive side of the ball because they got a high-powered offense.
Yeah, I really like that. So I think breakout player of the game. Well, first off, that's a great question. And I know I talk a lot about the D line, but I think I'm going to go in the secondary, and I think that Mr. Riley Moss is going to have a breakout game.
Really, I like that. I love that.
I think he's a sleeper pick on this too, because I think he's going to have. Well, first off, the secondary, like we talked about earlier, they're going to have a big assignment this weekend. But I think that he's going to get tested. I think, in my opinion, or at least if I'm Purdue, I'm thinking, okay, he got burned quite a bit by Minnesota's receivers last year, which is obviously a tall test with Tyler Johnson and Rashad Bateman. So, okay, let's try and pick on him and see what happens. But I tell you what, he's going to be somebody that you don't want to mess with. He might get burnt once or twice, and that's part of the learning process, but he is my sleeper big time player of the game.
I like it. And I'm going to go a little different here. And again, I'm going to point at my Tyler Goodson pick, and knock on wood that I don't jinx this young man and put any unwanted expectations on him. But I'm going Justin Jacobs. I think you're going to see him, and I think he's going to solidify himself at one of those linebacker spots here this weekend, along with Nick Niemann while Jack Campbell's out.
So you think that he's actually going to get some playing time?
I think he's going to get some playing time, and I think he's going to play a significant role too.
All right.
So
I like that. Rob, who do you got?
Sure. So my breakout player is going to be on the offensive side of the ball, and I think it's going to be Amir Smith-Marset. So he had a breakout game in the Holiday Bowl. I think he had a coming out party, 3 touchdowns, one of them being on special teams. And so he's just somebody who I was waiting for him to kind of break out like all last year. I was made some bets about how I wanted him to return at least one kick because he said that he would.
and he delivered.
And so and he delivered. So, I want him to be more involved. It seems like last year we sort of threw a lot to Brandon Smith before he was injured. And like I was really excited to like see him catch the ball, but as big of a target as he is in the red zone, which is great, I think that Amir Smith-Marset is sort of like the lightning to his like more of a possession receiver. So I'm really looking forward to seeing if Amir Smith-Marset can continue the way he ended last season. And I'm also really interested to see how Spencer Petras plays. But back to Riley Moss, Bo, I'm super excited to see his progress from last year because if you guys remember, and it's okay if you don't, the last time we played Purdue, David Bell caught the ball 13 times for 197 yards and a touchdown.
Dude, well, think about that times 2 because there's going to be Rondell Moore alongside him. So we're going to have a tall task. At least our secondary is going to have a tall task getting him. What's up, Dill?
Just showing off the Hawkeye pride here. That's all.
Nice. We'll let you do that.
But no, I really like that pick as far as the offensive side of the ball goes, Bo. I think that's huge. I think my pick to click on the offensive side of the ball is going to be Tyler Goodson, without a doubt. I think stealing some of Bo's stats that he picked up here, but the last time that Iowa played a Bobby Diaco, former Iowa Hawkeye, so the new defensive coordinator at Purdue University, last time they played him, they just exploded in the rushing game. I think they had a total of 313 yards, if I'm not mistaken. So incredible. Again, Bo, I apologize for stealing your stat there, but that's my guy. I think he has a breakout game, and I'm gonna go with him 150 plus with a pair of TDs.
I like that. And guys, I'm going to go straight into one of my favorite segments, and even the favorite segment of the show.
And we need to let Rob say it because he always says it so cool.
He does.
Sure.
Do you want to tell us about those? What is the segment we like the most?
So this is a little segment on Hawkeyes and Tallboys where we like to talk about good vibes and bad vibes. So we we just talk about like the things that we feel like are going to go right and give us some good vibes, and then we also want to talk about some things that may not be very good and could bode some bad vibes for us Hawkeye and Tallboys.
100%.
Yeah,
100%. And I think we kind of hit a little bit on the good vibes, but with our breakout player of the game. But I'm going to go ahead and I'll start out if you guys don't mind. My good vibes. I'm going to go with the offense in total, if that's even legit.
Sure.
I think actually, you know what? I'll break it down. I'm going to go ahead and say the offensive line is going to be my good vibes. They're going to protect Spencer Petras. Petras is going to have enough time to make decisions and throws. Our running backs are going to have some sweet holes to run from. And I think it's going to give enough time for our receivers, obviously, to progress. But I think that Spencer Petras is going to get sacked less than 3 times this week because of how good our offensive line is going to be. Bad vibes. I'm going to talk about the receiving core for Purdue. It's not just our linebackers, it's our defensive backs. I think they're good, but I think that Purdue's offensive weapons on receiver are going to be a little bit better than us. So that would be my only bad vibe.
Yeah, and that's tough to argue, Bo, because you hit my bad vibe on the head right there. Is that wide receiver duo they got there at Purdue? It's deadly. I think Rob was just pointing it out that David Bell had 13 receptions, 190 something yards, and a TD or 2 last year playing Iowa, and that was without Rondell Moore, so they could key on him. So it's going to be rough, on the defensive side of the ball. There's going to be a lot of things to work out. I think specifically in the first half, we might be a little disappointed. I do think they eventually figure that out though. So, but nonetheless, I'm still saying that's my bad vibe, is just that Purdue passing attack is, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow. But my good vibe, on the other hand, is Iowa's passing attack. And like we hit on earlier, we never talk about how good Iowa's passing attack is. So, it's just incredible to say, I think, to even pick which one of those receivers is going to have a breakout game. I mean, you have to you'd have to throw a dice. Yeah, you'd have to throw a dice. There's 6 weapons on that receiving core that could break out. So, I don't know. Part of me keeps thinking Sam Laporta is going to have a breakout game because, the way he played in the Holiday Bowl. I mean, the stats may not show it necessarily because I think he had decent stats from that game, but those Purdue secondary for the most part are going to be keying in on those wide receivers, and that just leaves that seam route over the middle open for Laporta. So, I'm looking at him in the tight end position to really step up and just start passing attack in general. I just feel really, really good about it. Look for a high scoring affair here Saturday, boys.
Yeah, absolutely,
You
guys.
thirsty, bud? I don't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
I am still working on this one.
Okay.
This tall boy. So if you see the difference, it's like almost double as tall as this one is. This tall boy.
Oh, yikes!
It's like a 19.2 fluid ounce one.
Well,
I got it for my birthday.
You're drinking all days over here. Me and Bo are the classy domestic drinkers.
You got to drink what you got. Throw what you know.
That's right. Fair.
But
go on. Sorry, buddy.
No, when it comes to bad vibes, guys, just like you guys, I'm worried about this Purdue Boilermaker passing attack. I will tell you guys though that maybe some good news is that well, I mean, I guess not necessarily good news, but when we faced Purdue last time, obviously Rondale Moore was not part of their passing attack, and so they basically focused on David Bell primarily. But having those guys back, I think it maybe helps us a little bit to be able to be able to kind of contain them a little bit more.
Yeah,
and
absolutely,
I think
Rob. That's a really good point. They're familiar with it, so I like what you're saying there. But go on.
So yeah, I feel like they'd be able to contain it, but it all starts with the defensive line, and so that's kind of what I'm going to be looking forward to. That's going to be my good vibe. So Chauncey Golston, on the right end, and then I think I brought up. So they just came out with they released the depth chart for our defense, and so I'm really looking at Chauncey Golston, obviously Davion Nixon, and then they got Austin Schulte at right tackle, and Zach Van Valkenburg at right end.
Snaps last year, and he actually did pretty well. Yep. He's like the next Anthony Nelson.
Yeah, he's a transfer from Hillside College or Hill Riverside College, something like that, a little D2 school. So
he's a tall, lanky guy.
Yep, tall, lanky guy. I love that Anthony Nelson comparison because it's just a tall, lanky clone that still has the strength to make an impact on that D line. So I'm with you there, Rob.
6'4", 270, Zach Van Valkenburg. Chauncey Golston, 6'5", 270. So some big guys on the D line, hoping that they can make whoever it is that's going to be throwing the ball for Purdue's day miserable. Now, the reason I say that is because they went through 3 quarterbacks last year, guys. So the Purdue Boilermakers, actually I just had this up here. They had Jack Plummer. Yep. And I don't know if he's related to Jake Plummer.
He sure is. I think he's either the son or the nephew of Jake Plummer. They actually announced that multiple times during the Iowa game last year.
Did they really?
Because he actually was not the official starter. Their quarterback, you'd have to help me out on this, Rob. He actually got hurt earlier on in the season, and they ended up going to the 2 backups.
Yeah, it was Elijah Sindelar.
Yep.
Okay.
So
Elijah beat Iowa the year before when we played at Purdue. We got fucked by the refs.
Always blaming the refs.
No, we did. All right.
So easy to cheers.
So Elijah Sindelar started the year, and then it went to Jack Plummer, and then they went to Aiden O'Donnell. So he's a junior this year from Long Grove, Illinois, but whoever they have throwing the ball out there, I'm just hoping they make it miserable for him.
Well, and that's, absolutely, Rob. And that's a good point because Jeff Brom said himself in the press conference, or it might have been his brother, Brian Brom, who said it, but as far as the quarterback position goes, they're not even naming a starter.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming you're going to see Jack Plummer get that nod, but don't be surprised to see those other two guys getting some snaps as well. So a little quarterback controversy going on in West Lafayette.
Well, with that, guys, we finish up our good vibes and bad vibes. We want to get to everything that we have to talk to tonight. So obviously, that kind of brings us up to our predictions, unless there's anything else that we need to cover about today, this weekend's game.
I know Dylan kind of hit on it with the head coach Jeff Brom out, but I don't think we hit too much on Purdue's defensive coordinator, who did graduate from the University of Iowa. Is going to be calling plays. Dylan, what all do we know about Bobby Diaco?
So Bob Diaco, one of the guys that Hayden Fry, so played under Hayden Fry from 92 to 95 and did a little grad assisting at Iowa under him as well. Hayden Fry called him one of the smartest linebackers that he had ever coached. So definitely has the defensive mind, behind that defensive coordinator position. Has had a little bit of a rough go of it. He was defensive coordinator for Notre Dame for a little while, got the head coaching gig at UConn for a couple of years, and they weren't too good. Recently was a defensive coordinator with Nebraska, defensive coach with Oklahoma, and then last year was the defensive coordinator for Louisiana Tech. So, we know a little bit about his offense, where he primarily likes to run that 3-4, where he has a couple of outside linebackers in there. Has said Purdue has mainly ran the 4-3 for the past few years, so you're going to see a lot of 4-3, probably with some 3-4 concepts in there, though, especially with a couple linebackers lurking around. So, be weary of that when you're watching on TV as well, but nonetheless, kind of like we talked about earlier, last time we faced a team that was led by him as a defense coordinator, you're able to run the ball. So his defenses primarily seem to be more pass oriented, where as an offense like Iowa could thrive under those conditions, running the ball.
As long as the weather permits it.
Right.
So, and Rob, I think you're ready to get into predictions. I can kind of tell the group about the football game we got going on Saturday in old West Lafayette, Indiana.
Tell us all about it, Blow.
Just so you know, fellas out there, kickoff's at 2:30 p.m. Central Time. It's on BTN if you guys are looking to watch. In case you guys like the voice of the Iowa Hawkeyes, Gary Dolphin, he's on the air at 12:30 with old buddy boy Eddie Podolak.
He's still doing that?
Hell yeah. You bet.
Gary's still letting him?
Oh, yeah.
Gary Barta's still letting him do that, huh?
You bet.
Oh, yeah.
The weirdest beef of all time, by the way, those two guys. Why? Anyways, continue.
No, good. So if you guys are looking for good football weather, it's going to be in Indiana and not in Iowa. It's going to be about 53 degrees, beautiful day for football, sunset at 7 o'clock. Not a lot of wind, so it's going to be a pass-heavy potential game for Iowa and Purdue. So should be a good one. Rob, I want to know from you. Oh, sorry. Just let you know, this is statistics from ESPN. That
Yes.
Iowa's just shy of a 65% favorite for this game. The over-under is at 52.5. So, which essentially is about 26 points per team.
Yeah, if you're a better, hammer that over. Hammer the over.
Yep.
It's going to happen. There's no way they do not score between the two teams less than 53 points. So hammer it.
And then
Last year we won 26-23. Sorry, go ahead.
Bet your vehicle on it if you want.
or your house, whatever. And then the spread's at -3. Iowa's -3. So, Rob, I want to hear your full takedown on all of this.
Sure.
Is Iowa going to win? They're going to cover the spread. You tell me what you think, man.
Sure. Iowa's a better team overall. I feel like we have just the better players on our team. So no matter, who it is that is going to be stepping onto the field when it comes to like filling these holes and making plays on our offense or defense, I think we have a good idea of like who we'll see. But I just think that, we're just flat out a better team. I don't think Purdue's there. They weren't there last year. They showed that they could make plays against us, but we still came out with a win, even that being said with David Bell and his amazing game that he had against us. I mean, one player, it takes 12 to win or 11 guys on each side, So, you know what I mean? It's going to take more than just the receiving core. Iowa has playmakers on both sides of the ball. And so I do think that it's going to be, a win for Iowa. I think we're going to win by more than 3. So I would take them with the spread. You're shaking your head? No?
I'm just flipping my hair. I'm not shaking my head at you.
Oh, What was I thinking? Of course. Got to let the hair flow. You got to let the flow. But no, I do think it's going to be if I were to predict the score, I would say it's going to be, Iowa 27, Purdue 20. So.
Right on. Dill, you want to follow it up?
Yeah. So 27-20. So you're taking the under there, Rob, eh?
What is that, 47?
Mm-hmm.
You're saying hammer the over?
I guess. That's okay, though. You can pick the under. That's okay. That's okay.
I guess wrong, I would be.
That's okay. What?
No, I'm just thinking. I'm just doing the math in my head. I'm like, yeah, I guess I am taking the under, but I hate that. I sort of hate that I am taking the under.
No, that's okay. See, I see a little bit more firepower in my prediction. So I'm going with a final score of, we're looking at, I've been going back and forth on this, but I'm going to go 41-38. And so if you guys remember the last time that we played in West Lafayette, Purdue ran off with field goal at the last second. So I'm going the other way around. I think this is going 38-38. And I think Keith Duncan wins this with the last second field goal to solidify a comeback victory for the Iowa Hawkeyes. I think we are down 2 scores or more at some point, and I think we come back and we win this one 41-38.
That's pretty bold, saying that we're going to have a brand new quarterback in the system. I mean, scoring that many points. But I do think you're right. I think we're going to score a bunch of points.
Really?
I think Iowa, Rob, I really like your prediction. Honestly, I really do. But I'm going to hammer the over on this, and I think Iowa covers the spread. I got Iowa winning 38-25. I don't know how Purdue gets 25 points, but they're going to find a way to get 25 points.
I'm alone on an island in the under.
Yeah, I think we're only going to see Keith Duncan on 1 field goal attempt, and the rest are going to be extra points. Okay. And that's how he's going to win the Grow Zone week 1. But yeah, I think this offense is going to be. There's way too much star power for us to even want to punt. And if we do, we have this Australian who's going to pin him inside the 10 every single time. And I know Pat McAfee is going to be watching, thinking, God, Iowa has the best punter in the nation. Anyway, I feel really good about this Iowa offense. Although I do feel good about Purdue's defense or offense, I think Iowa's defense is going to look pretty damn good.
Yeah. I was going back and forth because I was thinking that I was just immediately thinking that this has the makings to be a shootout type game. But I just want to give our defense more credit than that. And for some reason in the past, and if you've seen Iowa sports, like Purdue has just been sort of like always hanging around with us.
They're a thorn in the side of the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Well, and too, it's tough that this is the first game. Like, we don't have Miami or UNI or Iowa State even to open up with. It's Purdue. Yep.
And I don't know if
into the 9-game Big Ten schedule, which brings up another good point.
Mm-hmm.
We got to go through season predictions as well. I just thought about that.
That's true. So it's a 9-game schedule, guys, only playing Big Ten conference games. So for that being said, I can pull up what our schedule looks like here. But I guess, what are your initial thoughts, guys? Do you think that this is a 9-0 year? That would be
let me
odd.
ask you this. ESPN has Iowa as a 6-win team. Do you think we are better or worse or even than a 6-win team? Rob,
sure. So let's take a look at the schedule, guys. So we're going to have Purdue this weekend. Then we're going Northwestern at home. And then this is the crossover game. We have Michigan State at home, which we haven't played for a few years, but I know that they've been decent always in their squad. Then we have going to Minnesota, which is ranked 21st in the nation right now, which will be a tough game. Then we have to go back after we go to Minnesota. Then we go to Penn State, which is 8th in the nation. Then we play Nebraska at home on Black Friday, which is still the same schedule, luckily, this year. Then we got at Illinois. And the last time we played at Illinois, I think we won like 70 to something.
65-7.
Yeah, not a lot.
And then we got Wisconsin, 14th ranked Wisconsin at home. So honestly, guys, our away games are going to be tough at Minnesota, at Penn State. But I mean, it could have been a lot worse, and our crossover games aren't that bad. So I say that we're going to be above a 6-win team.
I agree. And the tough thing too, Rob, that you mentioned too, Minnesota's a Friday game and Nebraska is going to be a Friday game. So it's going to be weird having only 6 days rest between Michigan State and Minnesota and between Penn State and Nebraska. So I'm with you. I think we're going to have more than 6 wins. Honestly, if this game goes, or if this team goes as good as what I think anyway, I think we're going to be better than a 7-game winning team. I think we could at least have 8 wins and then go into the Big Ten title game with some pretty big aspirations, potentially getting a pretty damn good bowl after facing the East champion.
You know, and obviously Barry Alvarez is one of the guys that was, you know, in the lead, you know, setting up this Big Ten only schedule and whatnot. And it almost seems like he knows something that we don't, you know, setting up that game number 9 in Iowa City versus Wisconsin for what could be the Big Ten West crown.
Yep.
So it just, if it seems odd to anyone else, I totally understand it. But as far as, you know, the over-under goes, I think, you know, my head says 6, my heart says over. So you can figure out with any typical Kirk Ferentz team, you know, you're going to lose one you shouldn't, you're going to win one you shouldn't. So when I'm thinking, you know, I'm just going to go ahead and say it now, but I'm thinking that one game we shouldn't win, I think we're going to beat Wisconsin at home, you know, and I hope that's to take the West. If not, you know, whatever. But, and then as far as losing one, we shouldn't, you know, Nebraska's always pesky after beating them 5 years in a row. I think, you know, they can come into Kinnick guns blazing, and who knows, we could even have fans at that point, just kind of depending on, you know, how everything goes with COVID and whatnot. But, you know, you look at games like Northwestern always plays Iowa tough. Purdue, you know, even potentially is that thorn in the side. So I'm going to go with 7-2. I do think we end up hitting the over.
For sure. That's a solid prediction. I think 7-2 is what I was going to say. And if we you know, one more than that, that'd be great. But I mean, looking at our schedule, here, I'm going to pull our schedule over just so the folks at home can see it, so they can understand where I'm coming from here real quick.
Right. Yeah, this Zoom is so handy for the record. So I know we talked about it a little bit, but while you're pulling that up, Rob, you know, obviously this is special thanks to Zoom, and this is pretty cool with, you know, with Rob being in Iowa City, and, you know, Bo and I living here in Cedar Rapids. It's a nice little way to get together while maintaining our social distance. And for those of you watchers that are freaking out about me and Bo being within 6 feet, we have both been tested for COVID recently and both been found negative.
That's right. And also, listeners out there, it is actually an 8-game season with the 9th game being the Big Ten title. So all of us are anticipating a Big Ten title, although we are going to be the 9th game is going to be a crossover game. So the West will play the East at the same level. So the ones will play each other, twos will play each other. A new development from the Big Ten office today is they will not allow for any games to be they won't allow for any teams to play each other a secondary time. So just say Illinois and Rutgers happen to play in the middle of the season. If for some reason they end up last in the Big Ten, which who knows, they'll try and figure out who they will play in that crossover game.
That's cool.
Yeah,
like
which is really nice that we won't have 2 teams playing each other twice.
But we don't have to worry about it because we're going to be playing Ohio State in the Big Ten.
Exactly.
So you guys can see the schedule, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I honestly think it could be a realistic scenario that if we win against Purdue, Northwestern, I think we can beat Michigan State, and I think that we can beat Minnesota just like we did last year. We could be 4-0 going to Penn State and playing them, and you know, that could be a sort of a toss-up game, especially if we have that momentum. That being said, I could also see the scenario where we lose to Nebraska. I don't think we lose to Illinois this year. I'm actually excited to see Lovie Smith's beard tomorrow because I think they kick off the season. Illinois does.
They do. I think with Wisconsin, don't they?
Yeah, so you know that he's got a big ass COVID beard going on.
Let's show.
And then obviously we got
Wisconsin last year, if you remember that.
So there's some beef.
Oh, that's right.
So I think Wisconsin's going to come in and just pummel them, but in my opinion.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, guys, some good predictions there. So we'll obviously those of you who are listening at home, you'll have to tune in and see our reactions and on how we shake up against the Boilermakers this weekend. We want to get to Go ahead.
Mailbag.
I was just going to say, we want to get to a mailbag
here, Ram.
Dude, Rob, can I start out the mailbag this year?
Go ahead.
First one of the year? I'd love to. Thank
Sure.
you. And actually, this guy called out Rob specifically, so that's why I wanted to call him out.
Oh,
Great.
So his name is Sam Lar, a big follower of the Hawkeyes and Tallboys here, and he says Rob Wall. He knows how much you love this Iowa receiving corps, so this one was specifically for you.
Sure.
He says out of the top 5, and we'll keep Sam Laporta in there. So out of the top 5 receivers, so Amir Smith-Marset, Brandon Smith, Sam Laporta as the tight end, Nico Reganey, and Tyrone Tracy. Who's going to have the most receiving yards and touchdowns at the end of the year?
So receiving yards and touchdowns, I think are going to be 2 different guys.
Okay.
So I think when it comes to receiving yards, I could say I honestly think it could be actually who I'm going to go with is Tyrone Tracy. He's one of the youngest members of the receiving squad, but I think he really proved himself last year. I think that Amir Smith-Marset is somebody who could gain a lot of yards in a given week or so. But I think he's going to be used more as like a specialty type of player, somebody who would take a jet sweep or somebody who would catch like a bubble pass. And where I think Tyrone Tracy is more of like our underneath like wide receiver, similar to Nico Reganey, but I just think Tyrone Tracy can make more plays with his legs and with his jukes and ability when it comes to that. Now touchdowns, I think it's going to be Brandon Smith, and I don't think that there's anyone close that will be able to rival his receptions. He's just such a big target pending injury. I think he's just such a big target down there, and you can just tell, like when in the games that he was in last year, they would line him up one-on-one coverage on the outside and throw him a fade to the corner, and like that's what they do, or like a back shoulder comeback right in front of the pylon. And I think that's why wouldn't you do that with a guy who's 6'3", 6'4", and can jump like he can? So I do think it's going to be those 2. But it's odd. It's weird talking about like how many, different options that Spencer Petras is going to be able to throw to. So I really think it could be a situation that on any given game. But when it comes down to it, when the points matter and it's a clutch third down, I think you're going to see those guys step up. Brandon Smith or Tyrone Tracy, and they seem to make timely plays in last year. So that's kind of where I think. What are you guys' thoughts on the receivers?
But Rob, I'm going to go a little more basic. So you look at the stats last year and yardage wise, Amir Smith-Marset led the group with 722 yards. Tyrone Tracy followed with 589. Nico Reganey and Brandon Smith tied for third at 439, with Brandon Smith missing a significant portion of the season. So yardage wise, I think, they're going to stick to what they know, and they know Amir Smith-Marset is a playmaker. I think without a doubt, he's going to be the yardage leader as far as the receivers go. Now, touchdown wise, I am with you 100% because last year, Amir Smith-Marset and Brandon Smith tied for 5. But again, we look at, and that's just receiving touchdowns. Obviously, Amir Smith had a couple, in the special teams game and whatnot, but I'm looking at Brandon Smith again to be that red zone target, that big body down there in the red zone, that big frame. He was a state high jump champion out of Mississippi. So he's got the athletic ability. I think he takes over in touchdowns as well.
Love it both. And I got a secondary question, and I'll start with Dill on this one too. It's from our buddy Walker from Mount Vernon, Iowa, and he says, what Big Ten teams are going to be affected most by the limited attendance at games? We've seen this a big time in the SEC right now, but Dill, I'll start with you. Who do you think is going to be affected the most without a crowd at their home stadium this year?
I saw a quote from one of the players, and forgive me, I can't remember exactly who it was right now, but basically said, if you need a crowd to get you fired up, you're not a Big Ten football player. And it's like, okay. But nonetheless, I think, the impact of that 12th man, so to speak, as the Seattle Seahawks say, I think that's definitely there, especially in the Big Ten. You look at places like the Horseshoe, the Big House, all these places, Happy Valley that can hold 100,000 plus. I definitely think there's going to be that impact there. So, you look at teams that have the big home games. I'm looking at the Penn States. I'm looking at Ohio State's. Michigan's going to be another one. Even the University of Iowa, I think we're known, we're only in the just shy of 70,000 typically at our games. But, we're known for having that big crowd there. It's loud, raucous. So the team that I think that it's going to affect the most, in my opinion, I'm going to go with the Penn State Indy Lions, specifically because they go with those wideouts and whatnot, a little bit closer to the urban area. So I think, closer towards the end of the season, there's probably zero chance they have fans in that stadium. And it's going to be a little bit eerie. But then again, I think once the games get going, it's just going to be like business as usual. So I'm going to go with Penn State. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Rob?
I think it's going to help us. I think it's going to help us the most because I feel like we're a very disciplined team, and that's just coming from like having one of the longest running head coach, in the football. So I think just being well disciplined is going to be. These are the teams that are going to benefit the most, and I think the Hawkeyes are one. And I think that road games in particular are going to be not as tough as what they used to be. So if we're a 4-0 team going into Penn State, I'm excited about that because when we play Penn State at Penn State, it's always a night game, and they always have those white towels everywhere, and it's always like it just looks like pandemonium when you're going and to be able to play there and hear the play and understand what the cadence is and that kind of thing. I think that's going to be a bigger part of of the game where typically you just watch the ball, and go off of that. Now there's an opportunity to draw people off sides and to kind of mess with the other team. And even they said this in just in the NFL, like when they're talking back in the huddle, that they had the quarterbacks used to like yelling the play so that everyone hears it in the huddle. And now they're like having to look over, like even some teams are moving their huddle 10 yards farther back than what they normally are at, just so the other team doesn't hear what the play is. Not like, every team has their own plays, but like, just so nobody understands it. So I think it's going to be very interesting. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think Penn State is going to be one that's going to be negatively affected. I don't know too much about Michigan State to be able to comment on them. I think Minnesota is a team that will be heavily affected when we play them at Minnesota. I think Nebraska is also a tough place to play. So them coming here.
That's a big one. I didn't even think about Nebraska.
Yeah, the Black Shirts, what have they had? So however many sellouts they've had the last few years, whatever. I honestly like both you guys' thoughts with Penn State, but the team that I think about the most, especially going in the fourth quarter, that honestly gets me a little juice when I watch their games, Wisconsin.
Jump around.
Yeah. I think up there in Madison, I think that they feed off of their crowd going into the fourth quarter, especially, and especially if Iowa. I don't think we played them at home this year. Nonetheless, I still think they're going to be affected the most. Honestly, with a shaky quarterback like Jack Cohn, who knows? Well, they could be coming in and seeing us.
Jack Cohn's actually going to be out a significant part of the season, so they're going to be looking at their stud recruit quarterback who doesn't have much time, Graham Mertz.
Really?
Yep. So he's going to be the one taking over. Jack Cohn, I think just like within the last week or two, has been announced with the season-ending injury. So,
oh, damn.
Yep. So you're going to be seeing Graham Mertz, and we're going to be seeing what he's made of.
Cool.
What other mailbag questions do we got for us?
Oh, we got a few. Did you see any other ones?
No, that was it. They asked us about this.
I was going to say Mueller asked us about the spread, and
which we covered.
We all covered that with our prediction. So, breakout player on defense, we touched on that. We have a funny question from Seth Pals. Oh, I said his last name. Oh well, out of North Liberty, Iowa. It's a funny one, but he said, "Guys, is there going to be any punter this year who can kick it farther than me?"
Torrey Taylor, baby.
Yeah, so we got Torrey Taylor and Gerson is fully healthy as well. And so I heard Keith Duncan talk in his latest interview, and he said all three punters, because then they got another one whose name escapes me right now, but have been booming 50-yard plus punts in practice. So
I hope so.
Yep.
I hope so, especially for Gersonde. I hope he does too.
Right, absolutely. Is that his name, Gersonde? Mm-hmm. That sounds French. But anyways, and then another funny one from Kyle, he's out of Eldridge, Iowa. I won't say his last name for those of you listening, but he says, guys, Is Charlie Jones the reason why Oliver Martin turned into a traitor bitch again?
Oh,
Could be.
Ouch, Kyle. I love it though.
But 100%.
I love the
Kyle.
fire. But yes, that's absolutely why. I mean, he saw the writing on the wall. Like they obviously love this kid. You know, that's not a knock on Oliver Martin by any means. I think just the talent in the room was just better than him. So, you know, yeah, he went against his hometown team once again, and you know, chose one of their newfound rivals. So. Yep.
It's hard to hate on him because it's like you put yourself in his shoes. It's like he just wants to play football, and so he went to a spot in Michigan, and there were some things that went on that this isn't right. So he's like, maybe I'll go back to my hometown. And interestingly enough, which is is not typical, he couldn't find a place to fit in on this squad. We just have too much talent.
Nothing wrong with that. Hey, that's good for Iowa, right?
Yeah, exactly. So wish him all the best, honestly. But you know, I mean, it's he knew that he wasn't going to be able to play, especially like standing on the sidelines and watching Tyler Tracy catch a ball and spin off, you know, and be like 10 or 20 more yards. It's like,
yeah,
it's hard to compete with that.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And then kind of touched on it a little bit too, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it anyway. It's another question from Seth out of North Liberty. He says, guys, are the Hawks a stone cold lock at -3? No. What do you think, Bo?
Well, I guess, can you explain that to somebody like me
So,
who isn't
okay,
big with those
fair.
terms?
So for any non-bettors out there, so -3 essentially means that the Hawkeyes are going to win by 4 points or more. So if you bet on the Hawkeyes -3 and they win by 3, you push the bet. So you get your money back. If they win by 4, you win. If they win by 2 points, they lose, or you lose. You lose said bet. So
That's a great question, man.
I'm saying no, absolutely not. They're not a lock.
I don't know if it's a lock per se, but to be honest, I'm going for it because I think Iowa's going to win by more than 3 points. So
Okay.
to me, technically, I'll say a lock, but I don't know. Rob?
So you think about the Iowa Hawkeyes, and the last time they played the Purdue Boilermakers, they won by 3 points. It was sort of an ugly game. We kind of let Purdue back into the game at the end, and they kicked a field goal to push a lot of bets, I would imagine, last year. Now this year, you think about it's the same spread. It's sort of similar situations. We're playing at Purdue, but for me, Hawkeyes. Lock it in. They're winning by more than 3, dude. They're going to win by a touchdown. I don't think it's going to be. I don't even really think it's going to be that much of a question. Obviously, the Purdue Boilermakers are, have some options on offense. They have some weapons that they can use. But I do think that just the fact that they're able to score points doesn't mean that we're also able to score points. And really, I mean, we look at what Purdue has on defense, and who do they have on defense that can be able to, match up with our guys? Because I feel like there's going to be mismatches.
You're right. And you definitely hit on it there, Rob. I think, Purdue's got a couple of returning defensive linemen that are pretty good, that are going to be able to get some pressure on a young Spencer Petras. You look at George, Carl Aptis, another defensive lineman, Lorenzo Neal. And so both of these guys, seniors, the leaders on that Purdue defense that, statistically did not have a great year last year. And here comes Bo back from his urination for those of you watching.
Classic.
And, I just wanted to throw him under the bus a little bit there and embarrass him. So,
Couldn't.
But no, so I mean, they got some guys on that defense, but nonetheless, these guys were around last year too, with the exception of George. He was actually out for a season-ending injury. So, they have a little bit of firepower there, but I don't think it's going to be enough to hold back that Iowa passing attack, and especially that rushing attack.
So yeah, we'll see. I think it's going to be a lock for them to win by more than 3, but time will tell.
I'm being the conservative one here. That's unusual.
I know.
You guys hang around me too much.
Hey, we'll see what happens on Saturday, man.
That's right. So,
Any other mailbag questions or?
No, that's it as far as I got. So
Perfect, guys. Well, if that's everything, then I think we've officially come to the end of our first 2020 episode.
Yeah, and actually, I was looking into it a little bit and listened to our last episode to kind of pump me up a little bit. And this was our 30th episode. So our Dirty 30 episode is behind us officially.
On Rob's 33rd birthday,
On
baby.
Rob's 33rd birthday. So how about that?
Perfect.
Catch me outside.
Perfect.
Hey, thanks to everybody who's listening. We really appreciate it. Hey, let us know if you guys have any mailbags next week. We appreciate that. And as always, go Hawks, man.
Yep. Like us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that fun stuff. You know,
Smash that like button.
Share this as well. I know we got a little bit of a newer audience out there, you know, especially with all the rumblings I've been doing on Twitter. So, you know, hope you guys love it as well. If you have any feedback, as always, that's welcomed as well. And that's really all I got. Any departing words of wisdom, Rob?
No, just, you know, follow us, like us on Facebook, smash that subscribe button, hit that bell for the notifications on our YouTube page. And we'll be coming at you every week with some recaps on what we thought about what happened at the game. We're going to talk about, you know, what the preview is going to be for this following Saturday or Friday game, as we'll be with you all season with giving you all the information that you need in order to be prepared for the game. So appreciate everyone's support, and I hope that everyone's staying safe out there.
Absolutely.
So we're going to end it like we end every episode with a little Hawkeye victory polka. So take it away, boys.
Cheers.